for so long. Okay, she has had help, but she didn't have the right help because we don't have enough community nurses. We're short of community nurses. We don't have enough to go to all the homes. These ladies are working night times. They're working in the evening. You know, there's got to be a limit where how much we give as strong, passionate people for our job and for our country. Sometimes that has to be sorted with remuneration. That sometimes we do have to be paid at a standard rate, not at a Cook Island rate. You know, Te Wairoa has spent the last 10 years volunteering for the first how many years? Then we finally got funding to employ someone. We've had to bring in New Zealand physiotherapists because we don't have anyone here. So we're spending a lot of money to bring in overseas people where we're not looking at the future and looking at training our Cook Islanders so that they come here. And then when they come here, we're not paying them enough to keep them here. Totally agree with Paikura when you're saying that it's like we have to look after our own if we want sustainability. So looking for the future, we need to look at sustainability. So Mark, it's great to hear what you're doing in terms of bringing back people in student loans. Okay, so I can stand here for ages and ages talking about different people that we deal with. One old papa, he was in bed. He got the Cook Island pension. He got a caregiver. The caregiver wasn't capable of looking after him. That papa died like 4 months later. Lack of care. Again, he has family here, and it's not the family's fault. It's nobody's fault. We're not supporting. Te Wairoa gets funding this year. Cut. You're talking about sustainability for the future. All our NGO groups who are doing this for love and doing this for heart get the funding cut. How are we meant to be out there helping the community when our value of who we are as an NGO group is not even valued? So the first thing they do is cut our funding as well. And I'm sure other funders, NGO groups out there. There is poverty in the Cook Islands, whether you want to believe it or not. The reality is people are suffering, people are struggling, and there is hardship. And we are relying on our health people to get out there and do it for love. We're relying on our NGOs to get there and do it for love. And we're relying on our families and community who's so busy working just to pay their bills because of the high mortgages and the high homes and everything else. So whoever thinks that there's no poverty, please come with me. Come with Creative Centre, and you will see some real life, true issues in Rarotonga and in the Outer Islands. I'd love to take you.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, we do have some questions that have been asked on the radio, and I'm going to collect as many as I can, and then that's why I've got to watch the time as well, so we give the opportunity for our questions from the radio as well. So, thank you, Donna. Donna is very passionate. Our physiotherapist, Dee and Donna and Oropai and Mataiti, they do a wonderful job. Creative Centre, do you want to speak? Are you going to speak, or do I give the floor to, there's a couple of hands up here. Janet?
Madam Speaker.
Janet. Oh, beg your pardon. Aye.
Sorry. Madam Speaker, and to all our nominated panelists, kia ora ko toka totoro to te arota to ato ko Yesu Mesia. Akapoto wa to mana kia ora to all our friends and families that come along to participate with this special function. Madam Speaker, I just want to raise a general question. Just by listening to all the comments from our panelists, talking about the needy people, talking about the poor people. So, sorry, before I go further, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Tuma Mataiti. By the way, I was just listening to the comment talking about the poor people and talking about the needy people. So the question that I want to raise, how come we don't have any disability parking zone here in Rarotonga, or a pick-up and a drop-off zone? Because time after time I go with my wife as she works for the Creative Centre to pick up and drop off disabilities on the wheelchair using the Red Cross van with a hoist. Very hard to find parking, very hard to find a comfort or convenience zone to drop off the disability clients on a wheelchair. And time after time my wife takes the van out either to the RSA or to the hula bar and park it there till the client departs or till they arrive, and then she goes and pick it up and come back, because there's no suitable or convenient parking for the disability organization or our disability clients here in Rarotonga. And even to some of the supermarkets, and sport fields throughout the Cook Islands. So that's the question that I want to ask. As listening to all of you, some of you are quoting scriptures from the Bible. I do 100% agree to that. And even the Word of God clearly declares in the book of 1 Corinthians 14:40, let all things be done decently and in order. Thank you very much. Kia manuia.
Thank you very much for your contribution. It seems to me it would be a simple thing to do because I think the ones outside the food land are very, very helpful, although we are very naughty. Those of us who don't need it do use it. But thank you for bringing that to our attention. It looks like something that can be done. Yeah, just probably haven't been thought, or we haven't had somebody that's come forward like you have. Thank you for your contribution. Yeah. Janet. Yes, please.
And good evening. First, hello. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for initiating an event like this. It's a comforting sight to see those who are in positions of privilege open themselves up to attack, for lack of a better word, and I congratulate you. My question is directed at Ms. Picefield, but not limited to her. Anyone can answer this. You are right to say that our methods of addressing youth issues is retrospective. More often than not, youth come to our attention as a result of the association with crisis, be it a crisis of employment, of their involvement in violence, or susceptibility to early parenthood or disease. You acknowledged at the start that you were born into privilege in the sense that you have not experienced poverty. What is your opinion on the statement that young people who are vulnerable and experience hardship is a direct result of an unequal distribution of resources and opportunity? On the statement that there is, in fact, an unintentional but nevertheless operational attitude of bias from gatekeepers of opportunity, because we know that socially excluded minorities are more likely to endure unequal access to resources and opportunities because of who they are or who they are perceived to be. And this is a reason our youth are disillusioned and seek opportunities elsewhere. Could you please tailor your response around our young male participants, because that's who you specifically identified? Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll give the floor to Te Akura. Thank you for your question.
Hello. Okay. Thank you for your question. I would 100% agree with what you've said, and I have done research and done studies, again, that are able to result from a place of privilege as to how resources are distributed. And research, and this is New Zealand targeted research, but towards Pacific Islanders and Māori youth, and particularly males, research has showed that because of, let's say, an unequal footing at which you start on in life, kind of thing, we start on unequal footing, and that is a fact. Some of us are born into privilege, and it's therefore easier to access platforms of privilege and to go further in life and to get an education and to get a better income. So we're born on unequal platforms, and from those unequal platforms, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the three like little stools kind of thing, and it's like, this is what equality looks like, where a short person is standing on a much shorter stool, or on the same level stool. This is direct equality, and then it shows, well, this is what equity looks like. I am a very firm believer in the idea that equity is kind of the path that we should be following, that government policies should reflect ideals and laws and, you know, the idea that equity should exist in the Cook Islands, and I'm of the very firm belief that it does not exist in the Cook Islands. So Donna pointed out, like, and this isn't targeted to youth, but it's a principle that we can all take on board, that the elderly or the disabled, are automatically disadvantaged. The same goes for young males who were trapped in a poverty cycle from the beginning. So if their parents were poor, and poverty does exist, if their parents were poor, they are more likely to be poor or to be involved in petty crimes and et cetera, et cetera. And I think Petero pointed out that these people don't come forward. There is a stigma attached to coming forward, asking for help, admitting that you are poor, and admitting that you need help. So the poverty cycle continues, and it exists. When people don't come forward asking for help, and you can see why they wouldn't, because there are certain attitudes that are pervasive in society that refuses to admit that this exists. When these people don't come forward asking for help, the poverty cycle continues. And when they're not at the forefront of government's attention, if government's not directing the attention where it needs to be, then it's not really going to change, is it? So, yes, I agree with what you've said. My opinion on that is that resources are unfairly distributed, continues to be unfairly distributed because it's not at the forefront. You know, people tend to ignore these issues or refuse to admit that they exist. And as Petero, I think, also pointed out, just to address this idea too, that they get themselves into the situation, I think is a very important idea to address. So tobacco, alcohol, petty crime, all of those are a direct result of poverty. When you are born into a poor family, when you don't have adults there supervising what you're doing because they need to be out working so that they can get you out of that poverty cycle, you yourself are going to become, not always, that's a generalization, but you're going to be involved in certain types of activities that's just going to continue on the cycle. So, the point that Petero made was that these policies that we have in place, or like these programs, so children's support, the $17 a week that a child gets, a $1,000 lump payment that a child gets kind of thing, it's not needs-based, it's not targeted towards families that are poorer. That is something that needs to change. That is something the government needs to change. If a family is rich, if a family is privileged, they should not be entitled to the same amount of money to bring up their children as a family who is poor in the Cook Islands. So I just want right now to dispel this idea that families choose to put themselves into the situation, that youth somehow, that our young males who are troubled somehow choose to continue on this cycle, because it is not true. People in poverty are sad. They do not see a long-term outcome. They do not see a long-term way to get out of the cycle, and so they turn to alcohol and cigarettes. I am by no means condoning substance abuse, but that is what social research shows. So I hope that answered your question and more.
Thank you very much, Pi'akura. I think I might take the opportunity now to read a question to the panel from over the radio. And this is the question for the panelist. Doesn't actually pinpoint anybody, but I will read it, and one of you get ready to answer the question. And the question is, for those from the Pāinua migrating to Rarotonga, usually families that are deemed to live in poverty, without access to arable land to plant on in Rarotonga, how can their basic food needs for sustenance and income be supported into the short to medium term? Mara mai nā. Yeah. Te ronga e ara mai nei, shift mai nei ki Rarotonga nei, ka reo rātou inua, ka re ngā i tanu i te tai kai nā rātou, akape e rātou, e rapakau e tō rātou oraanga, e Rarotonga nei, no te tai tō rātou poto me ka re medium. I'll do one question now. There are two questions now. Who's willing to answer the question? Yeah. It's a hard one, isn't it? Because there's the issue of land, and only Rarotonga people with land, if they were kind enough, would consider. I have heard this conversation many times before. As the Outer Islander myself, I've heard it discussed many times amongst Outer Islanders. And Pastor, I can pass this one down to you.
Kiran. I think migrating from the Outer Islands to Rarotonga is no different from migrating from Cook Islands to New Zealand. Before you make the move, or before I would make the move to New Zealand, I have to study and look at all the opportunities, the difficulties, the advantages, the disadvantages, I mean, in this day and age, you've got to be able to do that. In the outer islands, there seems to be perhaps a dream that when you come over here, everything's paradise. But the reality is, before you leave the outer islands, you are aware of the situation over here. Now, the issue of land is always a contentious issue. And you know that it'd be very difficult for you to approach government or even landowners here in Rarotonga. So my view is that perhaps Island Council or people of each island should be considering that issue when their own people are migrating to Rarotonga. It is no different from me traveling to New Zealand, Australia. Not taking that step without due consideration. Now, that is one of the reasons why I'm very strong in using USP as a means of access for our people to higher education, so that they are far more informed and educated before they go to New Zealand or Australia. Now, I see that as a need, and I see the campus as important, so we provide that. It's only up to our people to take the opportunity. But a lot of our people, the same, perhaps if you can use the word suffering, that the people from the outer islands are experiencing when they come to Rarotonga are the same kind of experiences that people from Rarotonga are experiencing when they travel to New Zealand or Australia without proper preparation.
That's a very good question. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You didn't give me the microphone. Thank you for giving me the microphone. The question on land for outer islanders. I think if we look at the pre-Christianity days, land was acquired through conquest, tribal warfare. If we go back to more recent days, you married somebody with land. My grandfather was a Mangayan, no land here, but he married a lady that had significant land. Now, 3 generations down, we're landowners here. Same as one of my great-grandfathers was from Maniiki and married a Rarotonga woman landowner. So the way that outer islanders over a long period of time have gradually become landowners here on Rarotonga is through a different form of conquest, I guess. You've got to conquer the heart to get it. But that's led to a lot of land fragmentation, as Pastor Bobby said. To give you an example, the stretch of road in Titikavika where we were planning to put a pipeline through on the back road went through about 12 or 16 pieces of land. I know the member for Timuri Motia will know how many. But when we looked at the number of landowners on these pieces of land, they were over 6,000 individual landowning people on all of these lands. More than 5,500 of these people live overseas. They're not even resident here. So we have a huge issue which is around the land tenure system. But probably a short term or medium term, which was what the question was asked, how do we look at a solution for people with no land, not just outer islanders, but also people on Rarotonga, to be able to access land, is to look at the land that is sitting idle currently and work out a system for short-term usage of this land to be able to plant short-term crops. And this is something that I know my good friend here from the opposition party, the member Smiley, is something that he would keenly support, to look at a way where idle lands, we can identify the landowners. In many, many cases, these idle lands, the landowners live overseas, so it's difficult to contact them. But looking at some changes in tenure to allow access to land for a short term is one way to do it.
Yes, thank you. And Pastor, I might just add something to your another side of the need to come to Rarotonga. If you're just coming because you want to come, that could be a different story. But there are students from the outer islands who come here on scholarship. It's difficult to find them somewhere to go. The parents can't leave because they've got to stay and keep their sustenance with their pearl farming or whatever, fishing, selling fish, and they can't all come here. And you, as a person responsible for your child, you want to make sure they go to a good home in Rarotonga. But the families in Rarotonga are already struggling with their own lives. So it is a real issue. So it's not just like if you want to go to New Zealand, you plan yourself. It's much more than that. I have one more, Terry, I have one more question. Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, this is in relation to the outer islands. I think there is a real issue. Sometimes it's not by choice that they come here. Sometimes they are unwell and they have to be referred here. And so there's a dislocation of family. Where they come to in terms of healthcare, they may be at the hospital, but thereafter, where do they go? So I think there has to be a better mechanism to actually manage this. So members of parliament from those islands have been very, I've noticed their presence at the hospital when a family is from their island that comes to Rarotonga, there's some support from them, but it's not a very well structured. So it depends probably how the relationship is with their members of parliament on Rarotonga that they get the support. But it's a real issue, and it's also likewise when we have patients that are referred to New Zealand, also going into a place of hardship. So it's a very real concern. I think there has to be a better mechanism put in place in terms of addressing those issues.
Yeah,
thank you.
exactly.
And can I just add to that? What the data shows is that most people come from the outer islands and actually bypass and leave. So they're not coming to Rarotonga. There are lots of pressures. So if they don't have family networks to come to, the data actually shows out-migration. So it is a real issue that needs to be looked at.
Oh, that's good. Let me just ask the second question that I have here. We deal with that and then we'll come back to the audience here. The question is, and it could be good for the parliamentarians who are here, so what is going or what is happening or what is doing to better control the banking sector and ensure mortgage rates are affordable and would not result in so many families defaulting payments, losing homes, and then migrating overseas. Nā, te katano te awi angana te ngā mema parliament ni moe kone, no te mea te iwi nei te aronga. As we know, it's a problem.
Thank you. Very good question. 7 years ago, when I was Minister of Finance, as the Honourable Member rightly mentioned, interest rates were around 14%. Today, they're below 10%, 9%. You can get interest rate loans for housing now at around 7% if you have good enough credit rating. One of the areas that we're looking at to reduce even further the bank fees on borrowing, but also reduce the bank fees on transactions between money being sent to New Zealand in particular and money sent from New Zealand to here, remittances, is a change in the banking payment system. Currently, New Zealand dollar transaction that you send to New Zealand incurs an international fee, despite the fact that it's the same dollar that you're sending. So the government is working very closely with the 3 banks at the moment to integrate their banking platform system. This involves an investment of something close to $2 million to allow these banks to have an integrated system across each other so that they can have same-day clearance. At the same time, this banking platform system will be able to integrate with the clearing system, the banking clearing system in New Zealand as well, so that transactions from here to any account in New Zealand will essentially be like a domestic transaction. What this means is that students here who are paying student loans in New Zealand and incur hefty charges on that will only have to look forward to a domestic transfer fee. Importers who are paying suppliers in New Zealand, the practice now is that they actually open separate bank accounts in New Zealand and transact their business with those accounts there. It's a very costly exercise, it's very messy, and what we're hoping is that through this integration of the banking payment system, we see the cost of finance drop down. I hope that addresses some way that question.
And may I say to our listeners who've put the questions in, how very pleased I am that they have put the questions in because they have not come up from the floor here. So thank you very much. And Te Uru, you have the floor now. Thank you.
I just wanted to go back to the previous question about outer islanders, and Pastor Matapo said that they should be looking at what life will be like for them in Raro before coming. And Liz has already said that sometimes they have to come for healthcare. But sometimes it's not just that they have to come for healthcare. We have a better education system here, better healthcare, lots more opportunities than they have in the Northern Group especially. So I don't think it's fair to say that they should consider these things like the cost of living before coming down here, because what are we actually doing to incentivize them staying on their islands? If we can't provide anything for them here, then we should be giving them incentives to stay on their islands. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And then also, I agree with Pastor Matapo as well that we all have a social responsibility to help those living in poverty, or we should have a social responsibility to do that, but I think that usually only works for absolute poverty. Not everybody can help with opportunities. I think that falls mainly on government. And I lived up in Manihiki for 2 years, and I know there are probably Northern Group Islanders here, like you, Nikki, but I just think that I noticed when I was up there that the education system is definitely not as good as here. They are doing a lot with what they have, but they don't offer. I think when I was in Manihiki, the schools were offering only English and maths. So I don't see how we can give scholarships to people in Form 5 only in places like Manihiki to come down to Rarotonga and study. They're already going to be behind. You have to take 5 subjects or 6 subjects at Te Reora. How are they supposed to catch up to their peers if they can't, if they haven't taken anything except English and maths for their whole lives? And then, how are they supposed to compete with other students here for scholarships to go away to university? And even if they did get a scholarship, how are they supposed to compete with people at university? We are cutting them off before they even have the opportunity to make these choices. Definitely some of them might decide that they want to be a pearl farmer, they want to be a fisherman, they want to do something else, they want to be a tradie, they want to do any of those things. They might not go to university, and that's fine, but they should have the opportunity to choose. We should not be limiting their opportunities at all. And I think that we often say that we're trying to include the Paenua in a lot of things that we do, but when it comes to the Northern Group, we say, well, actually it's too expensive to get them over here, so we're going to have to just stick to Rarotonga, possibly Aitutaki, maybe if we're lucky, the rest of the Southern Group. But that's not fair. We need to be putting money aside to fly these people here who are part of our country to have the same opportunities that the rest of us do. That's all. Thank you.
You can see the youth of the Cook Islands are in good hands because you're these two are sisters, and their sister is the chairperson of the National Youth Council. So there's hope for the youth and speaking up and having their voice heard. I see a hand at the back, yes? And I'll probably be able to take maybe 2 or 3, and we're going to have to quit. So, Niti.
Kia ora to the panel.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's here.
William, sorry.
I got the mic, yeah. I've been listening to the presentations made by the panel. I missed Liz, but it was really interesting to hear the different points that each of the panelists raised. And I couldn't help but think that a lot of it was desktop and reliance on a global perception in regards the subject poverty. I've been trying to figure out for the last couple of days the question that we've been talking about tonight. And I think where we have wealth, obviously there's going to be poverty. Because without a North Pole, there's no South Pole. And I think that goes hand in hand with this particular subject. We've heard WHO numbers, ADB, but I'm just wondering, Minister, whether we need to set the line ourselves as to what poverty is in the Cook Islands. It's no good relying on countries like India, some of the Asian countries. We need to set the guidelines as to what we say poverty is. And I guess my question will be to the panel. How do we measure poverty in the Cook Islands? Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. And I'm sorry, we can't give you an answer right now because we're just going to be running out of time. But when I round up, I hope to tell you what can be a next step from tonight, because we've got so much information tonight that will allow us to look into some of the things that will take us forward. So, Selina, you have the floor.
Kia ora ana tātou katoto. I just want to make a note on poverty and suffering. To me, poverty and suffering are the same thing. And the panelists in the front there are saying there is no poverty in the Cook Islands. And yet they say poverty causes NCDs and NCDs causes poverty. You know, the signs are out there. So for us to say there's no poverty out there, the signs are out there that there is poverty. We, the Cook Islands, have the highest rate of NCD in the Pacific. And we're saying NCDs cause poverty. And I don't care what United Nations says, what WHO says about the meaning of poverty. $1.90 is poverty. To me, $1.90 compared to $7 here in the Cook Islands, that's poverty. It's the same thing when you compare to us, the Cook Islands. And we are going off the analysis, the stats done by these agencies overseas. But let's come back and look and analyze ourselves as locals. The suffering signs are out there. You know, the high crime rate, juvenile crimes is on the rise. NCDs are on the rise. Theft, burglaries on the rise. Someone in the front there have just said that plantations are being stolen out there. Why? Because people are wanting food to feed their families. And, you know, parents are doing two jobs. They have their primary job and they're doing secondary job. Why? To put food on the table to feed their children. And the minister is saying, hey, coconuts are being sold on the side of the road, you know. But when you actually go and buy a coconut, it's more expensive than buying a can of Coke. So these are the things that are contributing to NCD. And yet coconut is a local product, nā tātou rei. And then out there, people are complaining their coconut trees are being stolen. Why? You know, aki nei te nui, oko ki te pai matara, I tauturu, I toranga, ki roto, I te ngutu are. And the akara neo, Madam Speaker, me akara o the panel, I moe kona, you all have good incomes. You all have good jobs. I think it would have been good if you had put someone there on a salary that's $7 so you can hear how they are performing in their homes. So you can hear what, you know, to buy food to put on the table to feed their children. All very well for all of you, including myself, to say, you know, there's no poverty in the Cook Islands, but there is poverty. And just missing on that table there would have been good to have got someone who is struggling at home to hear what they have to, you know, to share about their lives. And maybe someone from the Paenua to come and sit on the table in the front there and share to us how they feel about the Paenua moving here to Rarotonga. And so, because today, one of the things we talked about in our NCD workshop was, it would have been good to have heard the first experience of someone with NCD sitting in front there and telling us how they are suffering from NCD. So these are the things maybe we can consider if we are to have another debate. That let's not just look at, you know, the one side. Thank
you very much for your contribution. Yes, we have a lot of new things to think about because, as I said earlier, this is our very first time. You know, we try it out and see how it goes and what needs to be improved, and of course we're going to do that. And look, I do have some more Outer Islands things to say. Let me say that, and then I'll come back to you, Dana. And there's a Miss Cook Islands contestant, and I think we're going to have, Nettie, sorry. Oh my goodness, we're going to be after 7. I'm going to have to put if the minister can put a motion, and we'll put an election if we can go beyond 7 and see how that goes. But there's some refreshments for us to have after here.
We're finishing at 7.
If you just give me a bit of time then. Let me read this. It says, it's come on the radio. It says, making a point. This person just wants to make a point. And they say, Minister Mark Brown pointed out that another way of getting rid of poverty is to increase the tax on cigarettes and alcohol. That is wrong because these are addictive. So it will just make things worse. So that's good. Somebody's rung up to make a point, all right? He doesn't want to ask him a question. He just wants to make a point on what he said. He wants to respond.
Yeah, I don't think I said that increasing the cost of cigarettes was going to increase poverty. No, that was one of the areas we were trying to reduce people spending money on things that are not food items. But if I can say that the revenue that is collected from tobacco taxation goes straight to the Ministry of Health to assist them in their anti-smoking campaign, to pay for the cost of tobacco patches, pay for the cost of tobacco gum. So those that are addicted have some means of getting themselves off. And the champion that we have here in the Cook Islands who has weaned himself off the smoking, or at least he did the last time I spoke to him, was our former head of state, the former Queen's representative, Sir Fred Goodwin. And he took advantage of that program. And he told me the only problem with him giving up smoking was that he had so much money every week at the bowling club. He was spending more on having a few drinks, but that's a different issue as well that we'll have to deal with. But the idea of increasing the price of cigarettes was targeted at the young ones, the new ones. They're not the ones with disposable income, so they won't be able to go and buy these $20 packets of cigarettes every day at $170 a week when you think about it. So that's the target of the taxation on tobacco.
All right, let me read to you the next one off the radio, and this will probably be the last one. And it says, has there been studies about the success of Puka Puka? They have the largest population in the Pāinua after Aitutaki. Most remain, although some have migrated. General health is acceptable, and they live in a generally cooperative society. They must be doing something right. Right? You agree? Yeah. So the answer is yes, they are doing something right, and we should learn from them. So we need to talk to them and find out what the secret is. How are they able to keep everybody on Puka Puka happy, and women planting the taro and the men fishing and happy, keeping a happy life? Look, let's go and do the last 3 people who asked for the floor, and then we're going to finish off. Nettie, give you the floor.
Kia ora tātou katoa te ai. I just want to raise 2 issues. Firstly, in comments made by Pastor Matapo, as raised by our chair, education is another reason why people from the Northern Group. I'm from Manihiki, and I was sent here by my parents, and having gone through the life that we went through, I begged my parents not to send any more of their children here on their own. So that's the reason. Besides, every child have a right to quality education, not just those in Rarotonga and the Southern Group. As the speaker who said earlier, the young girl in the front, who said that the problem is when our children from the Northern Group comes here, they don't have a good, supportive home, so they will be successful in their education. As an example, I visited Manihiki about 2 years ago, and there were about 5 children who were entitled to come on a scholarship. But the parents stopped 2 of those children because they didn't have any proper place. I sought the help of our hostels here, but unfortunately that did not eventuate. So that is why every child in the Cook Island is entitled to quality education. Secondly, regarding the land here in Rarotonga, you know, I'm a public health staff. We go into the Tutaka because we don't want the dengue, the Zika, the chikungunya to reach our shores. And we find a lot of vacant sections which can be used for short-term crops. And please share this with those from the outer island. Short-term, like Manyata, Kumara. At least they don't have to buy the bread then. They prepared to harvest these lands, but unfortunately it's not available. So I have approached our traditional leaders in this aspect, because unused land full of rubbish and weeds are good breeding places and resting places for mosquitoes that cause these diseases. So that is the point I want to raise. Short-term crops. They're not going to take our lands. They just want to use it and keep it clean. That's my 2 cents to the debate tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tena. Last one.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Madam Chair, I just want to reaffirm the presentation made by Donna, who's been working with our needies here in Rarotonga and the Cook Islands, plus other speakers, that there is poverty in the Cook Islands. Let's not close our eyes to it. But the thing is, how can we overcome it? Yeah. Each of the panelists have identified areas they think they see as poverty. And also, the panelists have also identified how it could be overcome, each and every one. Of course, one said there's no poverty. Sorry, my friend, poverty did. I just want to touch on education. I'm an educationalist. And I believe education is the answer to overcome poverty. When you got education or above average education, you can source out, think like what Pastor is saying over here. You can sort out then, you can choose the right thing to get you to that high life achievement you want to get. But if you haven't got that high education, like we are saying, I don't agree with that. I agree with this young lady that us in the Cook Islands, in Rarotonga, especially, government don't just point the finger at voluntary organizations. You got a job to do too. In the past, there was a place called Arekaute for the children from the outer islands. This is where the education department is now, where they are built, or the sports arena. But it was done away by government, just like the budget that was cut for our needies, because they couldn't see that this Arekaute, which was looked after by either teachers or somebody who's really responsible from the outer islands to look after the students and also get tutors, source out the tutors for the students from the outer islands. I challenge government to consider this for the outer islands, not only from the north, but for the southern groups, so that they can come over here and further their education. If they want to extend USB, they can do it here where the resources are, instead of just going on whatever you call online. So, korue maka korue no maniguni. You had good education. So did all of you. So please give the opportunity for the outer island children to come over here and have a good place to study to become MAs, BA, to get their BAs and so on. And then they can choose to extend their knowledge to further the education of their own people in the outer islands. That's what I'd like to point out. That's the first one. The second one, now, Kapo, can I just touch on one? The second one is that I'd like the minister to reconsider for the next financial year for the budget for our needies. If you're going to increase it, put some more above that. That's my request to you. Don't say, oh, kare ugera what the budget. Kare rawan the budget every time. Kare rawan. So I'm saying a budget source it out and give it to our needies. Please. Tirara, thank you. Kia ora, Tato katotoa.
All right. Right, we're going to have one more, and then we're going to have to round up. Thank you very much.
Kia ora ana, everybody. Good
Kia ora ana.
evening. Just adding on to what Selena said about NCD causing poverty, would you agree or disagree that diversity has contributed to the change in our lifestyle? Diversity in a sense where 50 years ago, our people used to plant our own crops. To go to a destination, we would walk, and compared to nowadays where we have processed goods at the shops that are accessible, and to go to the shop just down the road, we would jump on the bike and drive there. And in saying that, would you say that we have inflicted poverty upon ourselves because of our change in attitude? We cannot blame the government that we have minimum wage. We cannot blame the lack of education because we are wanting a lifestyle that is not our own. We are being influenced by overseas lifestyle that we are wanting to incorporate here in our lives. And as the saying goes, it's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So in saying that, I think that everybody can individually contribute to minimizing poverty if it has surfaced, or even preventing it by educating us more on how we can prevent this. And in contrast, in a biblical sense, I don't think there is poverty because God's grace should be sufficient enough to fuel us. So my question is, would you agree or disagree that, diversity has contributed to poverty which we have inflicted in ourselves? Thank you.
Do you have a particular person you would like to ask that question to?
No, sorry, it was just a
Okay. Any takers? Do you want to answer her question first in the wrap up? Okay. All right. All right. Okay, let me just give you the statement that's come from the radio. And they're saying, one of the speakers said, we don't have poverty. That is wrong. There is poverty. The elderly are finding it hard to find jobs because of their age. How can these people look after their families if it wasn't for? There's a big question mark. Some people, tourism industry. That's where people go to get a job. Some people will not have jobs. So, Te Uru, you have a supporter out there. What she says is, what Te Uru said, she's correct. How's that? Okay, we've now come to the end of the questions from the floor or the discussions, which have been really fantastic. I'm just going to quickly, if you allow me, just quickly give these people 2 minutes to round up because it's getting really late.
Kia ora ana all. I think this was a very good debate. While some of the questions are left there for further discussion, very difficult and can't be answered today. I do want to respond to some of the questions that have been made by the floor that haven't received a response. William Framheim asked a question around government setting targets on what is poverty, and I would just confirm that in the National Sustainable Development Plan, it has defined set targets on what government needs to do to reduce inequality. So that, in the absence of a pure definition, gives us a standard. So there is the first goal, 1.1, requires us to measure the percentage of people living below a minimum livable wage. So there is a quantitative target there about what is the minimum livable wage, and then measuring how many what is the percentage on those that fall below that. Secondly, there is another measure about looking at real growth in the lowest 20% of incomes. So those help answer the question on government's target to address poverty. On Pāinua, I think comments made by Te Uru is really good on how can government, or how can there be opportunities to retain populations in the Pāinua. I know in recent years the government's put substantial, and it needs a lot of investment, but there are positive steps that have been made. The renewable energy projects, I think, is a really key one that's happened in the Northern Group, which has reduced 95% of the reliance on diesel for their power generation. There are things like hydroponic stations, but they're small things, but I think they matter. The question made at the front about diversity of lifestyle and how much has that contributed to poverty, my view on that is the diversity of lifestyle, when you go back 50 years and now, probably has a greater positive impact in terms of incomes. We can see that GDP and real incomes have grown. However, I think it's created other issues that were not prevalent or not so major back 50 years ago. For example, what we're seeing is a widening gap, so probably the gap in incomes wasn't so large back then. Overall, I think the question on whether there is poverty, that wasn't supposed to be the question of this debate. I don't think anyone would deny that there is poverty in the Cook Islands. We look at there are poverty of opportunity, there's differences in income, the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And I just go back to what the Member of Parliament, Smiley Heather, did say. I think in his speech he did caveat that when he said there's no poverty, he was using the measure of $1.90 a day. So under that measure, yeah, you'd probably say that, but it is not relevant. It's not a relevant measure for the Cook Islands. Overall, my view is that, I still believe that the government and all of the different stakeholders, businesses, individuals, families, over that long-term period have contributed to reduction of poverty. There, of course, always remain challenges, and we've heard a number of good ideas put out here today. And the challenge always comes back to government with fiscal constraints on how best to cut up the pie that they have. So with the ideas that have been put forward here, what in the budget then has to what's the opportunity cost? What do we stop funding? So those are the challenges that government really faces. But ultimately, with this debate, I think we all acknowledge that there is hardship and there's inequality in the Cook Islands, and the job of all of us is to really focus on how do we address it going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you very much for this evening. Again, Madam Speaker, I think it's been a great opportunity. It's great questions from the floor. Good dialogue, good thinking about going forward. There were some questions I felt perhaps we haven't been able to reveal enough of. I'd really like to make one point at this stage that maybe a lot of people in this audience were not aware of, but the health system and the hospital has been a default centre for some of those living in hardship or in poverty. We have been for probably about 30 years. There has been this term banded around as granny dumping. So the family structure has definitely changed. And so how we actually looked after our people, our loved ones, have changed over time. So that's something that's didn't quite come out in our discussion. I think we look to comments from the outer islands, Puka Puka, classic model, go local, do local solutions for local contexts. So great sample for us to look at. We talked about not looking at global or international approaches to look into what we are doing fantastic at and see whether we can actually make that approach to Rarotonga as well. So I think there is some models of care that we can actually look into. Ministry of Health, they've always had a logo about invest in your health. It's not necessarily about money. It's about the choices, the good choices you invest in your health. So on that note, thank you very much for tonight.
Thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for all your questions. I just want to talk about the parking space for the disability. Back in 2009, I called the police commissioner, the accommodators, which is the tourism industry. I called them together. I was the minister for infrastructure at the time and transport. I called these people together and I asked them to make sure we accommodate the bus, the transportation, also the taxis and the disability at the airport, and also at the accommodations, which is the, at the time, the Rarotongan, the Edgewater, and the, what's them in Ngatangia. They were the big accommodation. So I told them, get this in, and that's when we started the parking space for the buses and the taxis at the airport. In town also, I asked them to get these in place, but I don't know what happened after. Maybe a new minister, new thing, so I'm not sure. Also talking about the students coming from the outer islands to stay here and study. Now, Mama Tina, I quite agree. In the past, te kita nau te au tamariki no kiro te tere arekaute up at Te Reora. Now, thank you for that. Thank you for that information, bringing it back. Also, how do we measure poverty? I think that's up to our panels up here, the Internal Affairs and Health, to look how they're going to measure that. Because I just went online and I got mine from, like what Bettina was saying, the graphs, Cook Island, nothing. So I took it from that. Noria, I apologize to those people. I made that comment, there's no poverty in the Cook Islands. I'm sorry. So I apologize to you. Thank you.
And by the clapping, I take it we accept the apology, right? Yeah, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to be able to take the opportunity to clarify a couple of issues. As far as I'm aware, the government has not reduced the Social Impact Fund in this budget or the last budget. It may be that the committee, which is made up of the members of the recipients of those funds, have reduced their funding to their individual members. But that fund was established by the New Zealand government of around $650,000 a year, which they paid for 3 years on the understanding that the Cook Islands government would take it on. We're now in our second year of paying this out to our NGO groups. As you probably understood, I'm a big fan of education and support of the NGO groups as well. I have been with Donna and I've been with Ava to see some of these households and to see what we can do to assist them with small improvements in the way that they live. I know the ministry has a small fund to be able to assist the elderly in particular to remodel their bathrooms and toilets as they need more assistance to be able to support themselves standing and so forth. Stage 1 of Te Reora Colleges will be completed by the end of the year, I'm told. The subsequent stages to that will include the proposal is for accommodation for outer island students. As we look to the future, how are we going to provide these opportunities to our outer island students if we're not going to be able to deliver them to the 10 outer islands individually for very small numbers? Are we going to bring them here to do their secondary schooling here? We're already doing that now. Outer island students receive an allowance which is paid to the caregivers that they live with to assist them in being able to live here without their families. off the top of my head, I cannot remember what it is, but I know we doubled that allowance in the last budget. One of the things I think that I've learned in my time as minister is that if we are to look for solutions to the problems and the challenges that we have, we need to come up with those solutions ourselves. Because many times we've had people come in and say that we should do this and we should do that. But the models and the solutions they provide just do not fit our country. We're very unique from every other Pacific Island country. And we have, as you probably heard, some very good, capable people in our country. And a lot of the times, the best solutions that we can come up with are from those who have been involved in the issues and the challenges. And we shouldn't shy away from coming up with suggestions and proposals on how to address the issues in our own context. It may not fit what other countries do. It may not fit with some principles that are part of other cultures. But if we can come up with ideas ourselves, I think many cases that's always been the best option for us.
Kia ora everyone. I just wanted to reiterate my thanks for the turnout. It's pleasing to see that there was such a large turnout, and also pleasing to see that there was such a large youth turnout. So that's quite heartening. I think most of the questions have been addressed, and there are some comments that the audience has made that I very much agree with. And again, I'm really pleased to see the level of participation and passion that has come from the audience. I think if there's just one question that I can address, and this is just a personal opinion because, again, I'm no expert on this, but our lovely Miss Cook Islands contestant here asked whether diversity in the Cook Islands over the last however many decades has increased poverty or has added to poverty, and whether we in our own country are responsible for inflicting this upon ourselves. So my answer is in two parts. I do agree that if we are to narrow down the definition of poverty to NCDs, for example, then yes, diversity has very much played a role in the increasing number of NCDs and number of people who have NCDs, but no, I do not agree that we have inflicted this upon ourselves. To an extent, maybe our choices and what we consume and how we choose to get to the shop to consume those things, you know, those are probably additional factors that help contribute to that. But that diversification came about from Western ideals, from Western influences, from colonization, those sorts of things. It's, as you pointed out, in the Cook Islands, we had a large subsistence-based lifestyle before those outside influences came in. So I would never go as far as to say that we ourselves have inflicted this upon the people within our country, because I think that's unfairly putting a lot of blame on our own people. And yeah, I guess just to wrap up from that then, a lot of people have made this point, a lot of panelists, a lot of audience members, but we very much need to band together as a community, as NGOs and as a government to help address the problems, the issues that have been raised and highlighted in this discussion. I think that it's important that we all do our part. Again, you mentioned that it's what we can do for our country. I think that's a very important lesson to take away. But in saying that, there is only so much that we can rely on NGOs for, so much that we can rely on voluntary contributions for, so much that we can rely on like people to give up their own time, their own energy when they have full-time responsibilities, children of their own, and I really do believe that government needs to be leading the way in a lot of these initiatives. Thank you.
Yes, I agree that poverty exists, but I think what is lacking is the dissemination of information about poverty in the country. Now we're hearing some of that tonight, and I think that's commendable. But there are civil institutions out there and individuals who are willing to help if the information is communicated to them. Now, for internal affairs, what I say, you're not just internal affairs, but any other government agency that's able to help. You're not just there as information gatherers, but you should take the initiative to do something with the information in terms of the community. Don't expect the community to come to you. We are doing other things in our own positions, but I think you have a responsibility to make sure that information comes out. In fact, one of your staff in the past communicated that information to us as a church, people out the outer islands, not necessarily members of our churches, but we grouped together, raised the finance and whatever else, and met those needs. So if we don't get the information, we can't help. We can only help those where information is given. Now, there's a suggestion out there that the panelists perhaps has not experienced poverty. That's wrong. I can say this to you because Emmanuel Academia is a school I started 23 years ago, and we have students there whose families are in poverty. And we do as a school, we do something to help out where we can, including finding alternative accommodations and so on. Someone highlighted about education as being key to towards alleviating poverty. If that's the case, could it be that we are continuing to sustain an education system that is failing? Emmanuel Academia is a school that employs an alternative curriculum. It is totally Christian focused, and it is accredited by NZQA. It means we have students going right up to year 13, and from year 13 they go to university in New Zealand. They can go to university in New Zealand if they so choose. Palmerston Island also, I think it's called Lucky School over there. They've also employed the same curriculum, and one of their students last year, or the year before, came and spent the last 6 months at Emmanuel Academia as now a law student at law school because of going through an alternative curriculum. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's an alternative. And it's extremely applicable, can be applicable to the outer island environment because there are fewer students out there, and this curriculum is an individualized system. In other words, you can have multiple level students in the one class with the one teacher. Now, the other thing about education, of course, I re-emphasize the importance of USP. Now, there's a tendency for us to want to go to New Zealand or Australia. Now, I want you to know that the information I've received, that over 85% of all the graduates in the workforce are USP graduates. What has happened to our New Zealand graduates? Maybe they've stayed overseas, I don't know. And also, USP as an institution is on par with any university wherever in terms of content and quality. But it is up to the attitude of the students to make sure that they lift their standards up, not the institution. So the opportunities are there. Now, as far as the Outer Islands is concerned, I know that I've mentioned about what I said about the Outer Islands. I'm well aware of what has happened in the past for students. They should not be deprived of opportunity for education or employment. They should come over here, whatever. But in the past, the Arakote, as has been mentioned before, well aware of that. In fact, that crossed my mind when I made that comment, that perhaps government should rethink about kind of looking at that alternative again and perhaps reestablishing that for the sake of the Outer Islands. But I come back to my main point, which is our biblical worldview about poverty. Now, I still maintain that poverty is a spiritual problem at the heart of it. Why is that? Because basically, human beings are selfish. And unless that heart is changed to unselfishness, then nothing's going to change too much. And there's a saying that the world can be changed one heart at a time. And I think that is the answer.
Wow, thank you very much e te katotoa. Me take maata ke koto katotoa te aka koromaki I te noo mai kua pāti te ora. So e tano e ke ere tātou kai, I mua ke ere tātou ki te keanga. Aka rātou e aka kai te raiko, e ako tō e ere ki te keanga. But just before we close down, let me just round up. So first, thank you very much to each and every one of you. I really enjoy seeing the young ladies in the front here and the young people in the audience. It's really wonderful to see everybody. And me take katoa ke koto katotoa, akarong mai re runga tā tātou rātio I te epo, e pera katoa, te aronga te ariki runga te internet, te akarakara, te akarongorongo I te epo. for our English-speaking friends. If you've been on the internet tonight or listened to the radio, we thank you very much for your involvement in this evening. There's no doubt we've heard that poverty is a very important topic, and it's cross-cutting. It just doesn't sit in one place as poverty. We've heard with education, with health, with homes, with caring of the elderly and the disability, and we could go on. So we have to agree it is a cross-cutting issue, poverty. Now, you only see the parliamentarians sitting in Parliament debating, right? That's the only place you see them debating on the bills and the business of Parliament. But the Parliament can also play a role in stimulating debate in society. And this is what the Speaker's debate is about. It's about bringing the parliamentarians to you in the community, as we've done tonight, and with our other specialists in the field of poverty that we've selected tonight. And I want to thank UNDP is here. UNDP engaged with the Parliament of the Cook Islands in a 3-year program. And here we have Dyfin and Adele, who've already been here. The previous workshops we've had, they came over, Dyfin came over to help us, and he's also come again. And the idea is to build our capacity, the people who work in Parliament, the members of Parliament who sit and make the decisions for you, the people of the Cook Islands, and our staff along with them in learning how they can support the members of Parliament in their role. And the program that we're working with UNDP is funded through the New Zealand High Commissioner, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in New Zealand, which we're very grateful, and I know the New Zealand High Commissioner is here, and we want to say thank you very much to him. They're the donors for our program. I also want to thank our Ministry of Culture, Janet. I haven't seen your boss around, but if please extend our many, many thanks to Anthony for the wonderful work you've done in preparing this place, in working with the staff of Parliament, in making it possible for us to do this wonderful, beautiful event, and we're most grateful for that. Also want to extend a big metaki ma'ata to the Radio Cook Islands for this partnership in being able to do this and further engaging with the people who were not able to be here with us tonight, which I think is just an extra bonus for us to be talking also, and them talking back to us through their questions. And quite obviously, this is something that people think it's important because they've taken the time to be with us, and you've taken the time to come. And I want to say thank you very much to all our panelists, and I think they've done a wonderful job. Many of them have been very busy. We needed abstracts from them about what they were going to talk about, and I think we got the last one this afternoon, and still one to come tomorrow. So, yes. Pokarakara koto no rātou I mone, please. Yeah. And then, ka pokarakara mātou no koto. Yeah, yeah. Yes. This is the first speaker's debate. It says a speaker's debate. It is a Parliament activity that even though this is our practice night, to me it's been very successful because I can tell you exactly how many people are here. I've been given a bit of paper here that says there were 138 people here, which I think is excellent. So a few of the papas are babysitting, because there are 87 mamas here, females here, and there are 51 papas. So let's clap for the papas who stayed home and the mamas who stayed home. Oh, okay. He says we're outnumbered by Miss Cook Islands. But honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight, and it's been a wonderful evening. There's for the people of the Cook Islands to be interested enough to come. And these are my thoughts before we close up, before I ask the pastor to say our closing prayer. One thing that I thought after all this We need to come up with a definition. Then we need to find who's out there, where are they, and what are we going to do, and how and when are we going to do this. And soon, put a time frame. Put a time as so in a couple of years we're not still talking about the same thing. This is something we can do. You've said tonight, yes, as a community we can do this. We need to help our civil society group, the government, need to plug the holes for civil society because they shouldn't be able to do it as volunteers. Many of them do it in their own time because they have a passion about it. They love it. And there needs to be talking at the table with the government and civil society and families. We have to include the families. And so, tira rai reira, tāku tutu o penga te rā, and me take maata ki a koto kātotoa. And, I will ask our panelist, Pastor Te Vai Matapo, nāne akamutu mai e tātātou anga e tātātou katikati as well, please.
Pura tātou te atua. Heavenly Father, first of all, we thank you for our Madam Speaker who have initiated this event. We thank you for the panels. We thank you for everybody that are present and those who are listening. We give all the praise and glory to you for all that has been done. And we pray also for your traveling mercies as we leave this place, that we arrive to our various destinations safely. For the food we are about to eat, may you bless it to our bodies. In Jesus' name, amen.
Wow.